Some people are saying that Trump is about to get this terrifying new power, independent federal agencies. He's firing these independent agency board members. It's about this Supreme Court case. That's what they're talking about, Trump versus Slaughter. And here's the lady, Rebecca Slaughter. She's an attorney, served Chuck Schumer. Then she got the Democratic seat on the Federal Trade Commission during Trump's first term. Then during Biden's first term, the Federal Trade Commission blocked a bunch of deals. The Trump administration didn't like the way they were handling it, so he fired a couple of the commissioners. It was her, Rebecca, and one other person. The other guy said, the president just illegally fired me. Here's Ms. Slaughter again testifying. She said that her filing violated the plain language of a statute and a clear Supreme Court precedent. Those are two different things. A statute is a law. A precedent is when the Supreme Court has ruled on something and then so set the way that things go. And honestly, she's right that it violates precedent because there is the Supreme Court ruling called Humphrey's executor. And the 1925 ruling actually had to do with the Federal Trade Commission. Another commissioner, Humphrey, who was conservative and opposed to antitrust stuff. FDR came into power, didn't like it, said that Humphrey did not support his New Deal stuff, and asked him to resign. Humphrey wouldn't resign, so eventually Roosevelt just fired him. And then actually Humphrey passed away, and so actually his estate sued the government to say that he was owed back pay, the firing was illegal, so that's why it's called Humphrey's executor, and the Supreme Court ruled in their favor. And so what this is all about is whether or not this Humphrey's executor thing is going to stay to be acting precedent, or if the president can fire people from independent agencies, or even if there is such a thing as an independent agency. And what this Supreme Court ruled in a unanimous decision was that Congress had created the Federal Trade Commission to be a federal government agency that was independent and nonpartisan. And so this is where it gets pretty interesting. Is there such thing as an independent agency? These agencies think so. For example, the Federal Reserve, the one who sets our monetary policy and manages our money supply, they say they're an independent government agency. Environmental Protection Agency, independent agency. CIA, independent agency. In fact, there's 80 independent federal agencies. And in the 1935 decision of Humphrey's executor, the Supreme Court said that these independent agencies had quasi-judicial powers, quasi-legislative. I mean, you and me speaking plainly, quasi is lawyer speak for does not exist. And this is where this video really gets fun, because the Center for Progressive Reform says that there's a fourth branch of government. And honestly, in their own post about this, they're just saying the quiet part out loud. The fourth branch of government, the administrative and regulatory state that employs 2 million workers, invests trillions of dollars each year on things like air pollution monitoring and cutting-edge energy research, makes rules that protect us all. So basically, this is FDR. He loses his case at the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court in 1935 says that it was illegal to fire Mr. Humphrey. And then we get these 80 federal agencies that supposedly are this fourth branch of government. They're independent agencies, quasi-legislative, quasi-judicial. But actually, when they wrote the Constitution, they literally considered this exact issue. John Adams cast a tie-breaking vote in the Senate that adopted language drafted by the pro-presidential removal faction, thus reaching the decision of 1789, literally to say that the president could fire heads of agencies that were created by Congress. Because, as the USA.gov website tells us, there are 3, not 4 branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial. The Constitution of the United States divides the federal government into 3 branches. And the executive branch is determined by elections, and Donald Trump clearly won the last election. But being real about it, this also means that FDR would have had his way more easily, so it goes both ways. If this case is overturned in the Supreme Court, all presidents will have more power because it'll be easier for them to do what they want with these 80 federal agencies. And this is John Roberts. He's currently the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and he's considered to be a moderate conservative, and he's been on this for a long time. He was part of a group of lawyers earlier in his career who pushed for more White House control over independent government agencies. Honestly, maybe he read the USA.gov site, 3 government branches. He's even on record saying time may be ripe to reconsider the existence of such entities and take action and bring them back within the executive branch, talking about independent agencies. And honestly, the reason that it's set up this way is because presidents can be held accountable, by voters. She can't. There's no way for the voters to recall Rebecca Slaughter. In fact, voters didn't even put her in there. The person they elected put her in there. But another angle to this story is brought to us by Katonji Brown Jackson, the new Supreme Court justice appointed during the Biden years, who said in arguments at the Supreme Court, agencies that have been in place for a century or more would be robbed of their expertise. You just can't have the president come in and fire the scientists and doctors and economists and PhDs to replace them with loyalists and people who don't know anything. So we get the experts thing. Perfect. Experts. You mean the experts that have a vast reproducibility crisis across pretty much all scientific disciplines, especially in the social sciences? That group of people who Americans' trust has declined sharply since the coronavirus outbreak. In fact, Americans have a broad distrust of the experts. You see, trust in media, all-time low, 28%. And it's because they know that a lot of these experts come from these colleges and universities that are doing such a great job, and also that pretty much they're all Democrats. As seen here, the blue indicates the percentage of professors that identify with the Democrat Party versus Republican, and you can see that in so many of these degree fields, they're all Democrat. Even in the economics, 85% Democrat. And here in the AP, when they report this story, the point here is to make agencies that are free from political influence. Yeah, it's politics that's the problem here. See, the only challenge is that politics is another word for democracy, and Trump won a term to lead the executive branch. And on this list, there's no fourth branch of government, the administrative and regulatory state.